All right, coding adventurers, let's continue on with part 4 of this project. So far we have the user being prompted to pick rock, paper, scissors. We've got the choices here in an array with the index of 0, 1, and 2. Then we generate a random number between 0, 1, and 2 using the length of the array multiplied times math.random, and then we round it down. So this whole rigmarole right here, this mathematical gymnastics, produces a number between 0, 1, and 2 based on the length of the array. The reason we do that, again, is if I wanted to add more, it would automatically adjust the random selection. Then we console log it just to sort of see what's going on. Then we've got our CPU, which uses this random number between 0, 1, and 2, and then uses the array and picks the text string rock, paper, or scissors, just for appearances, really. And then if the CPU chooses rock and the user chooses scissors, we've got a conditional statement here. So we're using and, we get that. And we can do all of the loss scenarios here if we just use a really long line of code. Which isn't the best form, but it illustrates the logical operators, right? So if I were to insert all these scenarios here, so if I copy and paste this, if CPU chooses scissors and the user chose paper, you've lost as well. So if any one of these things evaluates to true using the OR logic, right? Then it's going to come up with loss. So of course our last one is or if the CPU chose, we've got it choosing rock and scissors and paper, a little bit out of order there, but whatever. Paper and you chose rock, then it's going to come up with you lost. And of course we can test this now. You want to console log CPU just in case you need to debug it and you're not sure what's going on. We're going to go ahead and console log it. And I usually like to say the CPU chose space and then concatenate CPU in there, which will be converted, or it doesn't even need to be converted, it's a text string. And it's going to concatenate it. So let's have a look. I'm going to come up here, pick up my index, right click, reveal in Explorer, open up the HTML document, hello world, we'll get rid of that. And then rock. And of course, nothing happens, and we'll talk about that soon. But the CPU chose scissors. Now, if the problem is, if it's we won, so we want to go for a losing scenario. So we're going to choose rock again. We tied, so we didn't account for that scenario either. And we got scissors there. So either we have a bug, and this is why we console log. We didn't actually tell it anything. So if we should have gotten an alert you lost, and maybe I missed it there, wasn't even paying attention. Hello world, rock, and there you go. We've got you lost it there. I must have missed it several times. So there you go. Always pay attention to how you're doing. So you might want to console log down here as well, just in case. Of course, if I was paying attention, it wouldn't matter, but you lost. Different ways to communicate with yourself as you're designing. So I can take the same block of code, shift alt down arrow, and I can say if CPU, but then I can just swap these out and create a different lot about, reversing the logic essentially. I always like to get this out of the way. So if user chose rock and CPU chose scissors, if user and CPU chose paper, and then if user chose paper, it's a little disorganized here, but still usable. Okay, and again, we're using these logical operators to give us an outcome, right? And of course, it wouldn't be you lost at this point. It would be you won. And you say you won, and there you go. Now let's go ahead and test it out. Refresh, hello world, rock. The CPU chose paper, and you lost. And then rock, and you won, and you won. So now it's working. What we're going to talk about here, though, is how we write conditional statements in a way that's more logically efficient. So if I say else if user, and then all these scenarios, if this evaluates to true, we get it. If this evaluates to true, so any one of these has to evaluate to true. So if it's false, false, true, it's going to be a true statement because of the OR logic operator. So if this whole statement here evaluates to true, and so on. So I think you understand that. But the scenario of a tie really ought to be anything that happens outside of this. So if I say you tied, that should work, right? So if I come over here and I refresh and I say, okay, rock, you won, rock, right? You tied. So we got that, right? That's great. And by the way, yeah, we're definitely going to get this alert out here. So I'm going to comment it out. But if I refresh this and I say doodle, it says we tied, because we haven't accounted for the fact that the user can put in whatever they want up here. So if they put anything other than rock, paper, scissors, they're going to get you tied. So we'll come back to that in the next video. We have to correct for user error. And that's only done, in this case, through testing, right? We may not have picked that up unless we tested our game. And so that's the importance of testing. But next video, we'll talk about handling that so that the user doesn't cause problems.